Anomie, alienation, and despair are signs of the times, but not unique to our culture or our lives. Loss of meaning, purpose, and hope, mixed with indifference towards others, have long been identified by the Christian community as the deadly sin of sloth. Sloth isn't just about being lazy. It also includes apathy. The Greek word akadia means negligence or lack of care. Sloth, or acedia as it was once called, also includes living out an apathetic attitude that nothing really matters. Sometimes fear and pain can lead us down a path to indifference and numbness. At the core of sloth is an attitude of whatever. Sloth adversely affects one's spiritual life. Sloth contributes to suffering. Sloth can lead to indifference. The book of Proverbs has a lot to say about sloth and laziness. It says laziness is infuriating. It's obvious. It's shameful. It makes excuses. Demonstrates lack of task completion. It loves frivolity. It's never satisfied. Prevents real rest. It's harder to live that way. Laziness is wise in its own eyes. It leads to want and misery, and so on. It's easy to poke fun at laziness and ambivalence because most anyone understands its temptation. Doing nothing comes easy. There's a lot of proverbs about doing nothing too. There's a proper time for rest and relaxation, but it's easy for sloth to get a toehold on our lives. Still with me? Okay. The first toe of sloth is mental. It means being too lazy to think, read, study, or enter into challenging dialogue. Just parrot opinions of others and go with the groupthink. Sometimes it's because the loudest voices get attention, whether it's social media, talking heads on TV, or the loudmouth at school or work trying to look smart. Popular books, movies, and media convince us to make no demands on our lives. We have formed no solid opinions, just copied other people's ideas. Bias and assumption become great labor-saving devices, enabling somebody to advance opinions without the dirty job of getting various facts. The second toe of sloth is moral. We criticize, condemn, and complain about all the problems in the world, like corruption, violence, cheating, murder, stealing, parasitism, injustice, torture, violence, war, divorce, poverty, jealousy, substance abuse, but with no real intention of offering to do anything about it. Sloth gives up due to burdens imposed by the other 6 deadly sins. Sloth says, what are you going to do? It means no motivation to get involved in helping others, constructively listening to them, and engaging with them. The third toe of sloth is spiritual. We give up when the Christian life becomes demanding, or we don't see immediate results. For example, short bursts of piety or prayer of desires that are not fulfilled. We want Christ, but only moderately. We love Jesus, but only moderately. We will follow Jesus, but only so far. To claim to be a Christian without wanting Christ more than anything else is a contradiction. But the gospel does not give us the option of whatever. With grace comes love. Love is an action. Sometimes we confuse earning with effort. In our eagerness to emphasize that we don't earn salvation, we can dismiss any talk about human efforts in relation to faith. God's favor is not earned, but along with receiving and celebrating God's unmerited favor, we're told to love God and one another. We can't love God without following Jesus, without becoming his disciples. Discipleship means discipline. Sloth happily accepts God's saving grace without making the costly effort of discipleship. Dietrich Bonhoeffer famously called this cheap grace. Cheap grace is the grace we bestow on ourselves. Cheap grace is the preaching of forgiveness without requiring repentance, baptism without church discipline, communion without confession. Cheap grace is grace without discipleship, grace without the cross, grace without Jesus Christ, living and incarnate. Sloth isn't so much a denial of work, it's a denial of love. Sloth chooses anything to avoid the hard work that loving relationships require. Sloth pops up as a denial of love your neighbor, and sometimes maybe even of love yourself too. Jesus spoke candidly about how we are to show love to one another in Matthew 25. St. Paul's advice to the church about sloth was to work hard, serve God with devotion, and let your hope keep you joyful. That's about as far from whatever as can be. Sloth, laziness, or indifference keeps us from loving others, but most especially from returning God's love the way we are called to. This laziness can slowly poison our will to do what is right and good and become like a spiritual deadness inside us. Sloth is the passive accomplice of the other 6 deadly sins. Sloth mistakes indifference for tolerance. Indifference leads to despair. Sloth is the sin which believes in nothing, seeks to know nothing, interferes with nothing, enjoys nothing, loves nothing, hates nothing, finds purpose in nothing, lives for nothing, and only remains alive because there is nothing it would die for. The opposite of sloth is zeal. Zeal, unlike zealotry, comes from a spirit of wanting to help and serve others. There is joy in serving God and others, and doing the right thing out of love. Love is a verb. It is an action to be taken and taken and taken again, like breathing, like eating, and just as necessary to our health and happiness as breathing and eating. Love is not what we think in our head, or even what we feel in our heart. Love is what we do. Love is only what we do. It really doesn't matter how full we are of warmth and sentiment. If it is not translated into specific deeds of love, it's pointless and worthless. So what about sloth, laziness, and indifference? How about zeal, joy, and helping others?